Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. That's lovely.
Outstanding.
How you been, brother?
Good, bud. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I was just sitting here thinking while you were rebooting that the gods, whoever yours might be or somebody else's might be, may not want us doing this.
You could be right. They're probably thinking this is a bad idea putting these two in the same situation together. So,
Yeah, I mean, we talked. I don't know. I probably a year ago when I first thought about doing these, we talked and we were like, yeah, even though it was like the height of Rona, yeah, let's get
yep,
together and do it, and
yep.
face to face. But it just our schedules don't work out that well.
No,
So,
exactly.
and this works good. So thank you. I
Yeah, my,
so I just for the 5 or 6 people who will watch as well as you, um, a little just what I'm trying to do with this. I mean, my channel, trying to get as much decent education out for free as I can to people.
yep.
This is an extension of that. I mean, there are people out there who have done stuff like you, like docs, nurses, I mean, who've gone on from being an ambulance driver. I hate that term, but you know what I mean. And
Hmm.
they've got lessons that the rest of us can learn to maybe make a transition easier or to show somebody it's possible.
Sure.
So that's part of what, this is about.
Okay.
It'll be a little bit about who you are, where you came from, kind of how you got here, and then you have a chance to kind of like, hey, this is what we're doing here now,
Yeah.
to educate everyone because some big changes have taken place, um, and just you know make it entertaining as well. One of the biggest messages I got after my first one was my sippy cup, my drink cup was noisy. So I was looking for a new cup today for this. And for our working together, I chose this cup,
You know
which,
what's funny? I still have that mug too, and I use it to scoop sand out of a bucket to spread on my driveway.
well, this was my first whiskey in the hot tub cup. But
Ah,
thinking of you, Bobby, and Laura while I'm in the hot tub creeped me out a little bit. Well, two of you. So I chose a
I know
different
you were
cup,
thinking about Bobby the whole time. I get it.
of course, even if he did take me out of his phone.
I think
I
I think I'm out of his phone too, to be honest with you.
I
I haven't
texted
talked to him in almost a year and a half, and I'm like, oh, I don't work with him anymore, and we don't get together during COVID. So, yep, I'm on the delete list. So
yeah,
you,
he
me,
told,
a belly.
yeah, he told me he was going to delete me. I was like, yeah, sure. And I texted him from Disney like a year later, and I showed him a picture in Epcot. There's a little train set, and Bobby and trains, and there'd been
Yeah.
a derailment. And so I sent him a pic. I said, I can't believe I got to think of you at Disney. And he goes, who's this?
So you know you were deleted.
Yeah. Oh Lord. Anyway, so you're not at Exeter anymore.
No, no, I
Yeah.
haven't been at Exeter in 2.5 years.
Well, as busy as you are, when I see your name on all these other things as well, I can understand that.
Yeah.
So, what are your job titles currently?
Okay. So I am the EMS coordinator for Concord Hospital, which now includes Concord Hospital Laconia, aka Lakes Region General Hospital, and Concord Hospital Franklin, which used to be Franklin Regional Hospital. So I cover all three as the EMS coordinator. When I'm not doing that, I am the deputy director for Tri-Town EMS, which is a municipal ambulance service based out of Pembroke, which covers the town of Allenstown and Pembroke, and backs up Hooksett, Concord, Epsom, that sort of thing. And when I'm not doing that, I am the assistant chief here in the town of Loudon for the Loudon part.
Always too many things in your
Yep,
cup.
way
Yeah.
too many things.
So, again, thank you for coming. Um, where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
So I was born and raised in Massachusetts on the North Shore. I was actually born at the Wynn Memorial Hospital in Everett, Mass, which is just outside of Boston. And then when I was really young, we moved to the North Shore, and I grew up and was born and raised in Middleton. Um, my father was a full-time truck driver and call firefighter slash EMT for many years, and that's kind of how I got into this. I always thought, hey, it's cool that my dad's a firefighter, and I'd go down to the fire station and hang out with him. And even in my early to mid teens, before I was able to drive or do anything, he would work regular station nights. I think Mondays and Friday nights were like the nights that he would work at the fire station. Him and two other guys. And I would go on a Friday night sometimes and spend the night with them. Have dinner with the guys, and he'd show me some stuff, and he'd let me drive around with the trucks a little bit to get a feel for it. 'Cause I'd been raised around tractor trailers and trucks and all that stuff, so I got a feel for it, and I liked it, and I joined as, how do they coin it? A reserve call firefighter at the age of 16. So I was still sophomore, junior in high school, and I would go to trainings. I couldn't go on calls or anything like that, but like if the tones went off, I went to the station, hung out, and I would help with cleanup. Kind of like what an explorer post might do at a building fire or something like that. Like they'd lay out tarps and they'd clean the trucks and all that stuff. Um, and then I got my EMT when I was 18 years old. So as soon as I was eligible to get my EMT, I went to EMT school. I went to the EMT school in Lowell at the old St. Joseph's Hospital, which is now part of Lowell General. It was part of Saints, and then they all became one. So, and I went to college for UMass Lowell. I went to college for business administration with a concentration in marketing. Friggin' hated it. Like, wasn't me. But I also got a job as an EMT in the city of Lowell, working for Trinity Ambulance, so I could have drinking beer money and keep my car
Because
registered and insured. All the important things in life when you're a college student.
well, you were at Zoomass Lowell, so
I was at Zoomass Lowell.
there were
Um,
some drinking requirements.
yes, you had to drink, and I was fortunate to have people in the dorms that were computer savvy, let's say, and were able to, at the time, and kids don't ever do this, um, fabricate fake IDs. So I had a West Virginia ID that said I was 22 years old and was able to get where I wanted to go and get the things that I wanted to drink. But anyways, I got a job with Trinity to work as an EMT, get some experience, have money and stuff like that. And that was my first interaction with paramedics, because we didn't have paramedics down in Middleton. Once in a blue moon, we might be able to get LGH, Lawrence General's medics, to our scene if need be, but that didn't happen a lot. So to go routinely on calls with paramedics and see what paramedics can do, it blew me away. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like, forget going to school and learning about statistics and sociology and all that other stuff. I'm like, this is boring. I would cut classes to go work day shifts on the ambulance. So after my second year of Zoomass Lowell with a 1.2 GPA, I found myself on the out saying, this is not what I want to do. And I had some really good mentors and partners at Trinity and said, you should go to medic school. So I came up with a plan and told my parents what I wanted to do. I said, I want to go to paramedic school. I checked it out. And at the time, the programs were the TAC here in New Hampshire, um, Northeastern University, where they ran it off the Burlington campus. And then they had the infamous Cape and Islands program, which a lot of people went to. So I ended up choosing and got into Northeastern, moved back home, got my own apartment after that, and went to paramedic school. And from there, I continued to work at Trinity, continued to work for the fire department. And once I got from my medic, I went to Lifeline, the original Lifeline. So Lifeline, Careline, MedTrans, AMR, and worked on the North Shore, Tri-City area, Malden, Medford, Revere, and stuff for a good amount of time. And that's where I started getting into EMS and doing paramedicine.
Nice. Did you do anything in high school like health doc or any of that, or it was just strictly, hey, this explorer type position?
No, it was for the most part just like a reserve call, explorer type position. We had a health science teacher at high school, and he was a licensed EMT, and he talked about his EMT. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And when I learned more about what it was and how he did it, talking to my dad and stuff, he's like, yeah, that's what we do. We have EMTs, and they work on the ambulance. And this is, like I said, back in a time when we didn't have paramedics. We had Everybody was EMT basics. I think we had two guys that were EMT intermediates, and that to me was the coolest thing. Oh my god, these guys can put in IVs and they can put an EOA in. So um, I don't know
Uh,
if anybody actually knows what an EOA is, but it was a really crude, horrible airway device that really didn't do much.
that when I was using them, we were reusing the tubes 5 times. You
Oh
just
yeah.
rinse them out with water and let them drip dry.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
whew. Um, so between EMT and paramedic, is there something from each of those classes specifically, either a lesson or like a mentoring like word of advice that you remember today and you think of it all the time and use it?
Yeah. I will go back to my EMT training. And I took a program, like I said, out of the hospital. It was taught primarily by a paramedic, Sean Dean, who I still keep in contact, on occasion through social media these days. But one of the things that he taught me, and I teach this to this day, especially where my role in here in Loudon, because we have a lot of kids that are joining the department. Same type of situation, just getting in through high school or out of high school, want to become firefighters and want to learn more. But one of the things that Sean had taught me and said, look, you can come in and be the greatest at CPR. And like I said, this is basics, basic school stuff. So you could be great at CPR. You could drive the ambulance the best. You know, all those things. You could be so we can teach anybody to start IV. We can teach, and the same thing kind of happened in medic school too. But we can teach everybody all these skills, but without your knowledge base and without your assessment, you're nothing. He says you need to know what's going on with your patient. He says, and
Mhm.
getting dirty, getting down on your hands and knees and talking to patients and looking them in the eye and understanding what's going on and nailing your assessment every time. He says, you're not going to be any good without it. So that's something to this day, almost Christ, 30 years later, that I still profess to these young kids. It's like, oh my God, I was able to get 3 IVs in my clinical time, for my A program. It's like, well, that's great. I said, what was going on with your patient? Oh, I don't know, chest pain or shortness of breath. I don't remember. Like, I get you going to clinicals for skills, but you need to nail the assessment. That is key. Go to test on it. You're going to test you on your medical and your trauma assessments. And when you're out on the street taking care of patients, you need to know what's going on. So there's one thing I can teach people or get the point across to people. It's like, know your patient, know what's going on with your patient, nail your assessment.
Yeah, that would be one of my do your job videos. I mean,
Yep.
these, and it's not just A's, it's medics too. Who just so what's
Absolutely.
going on with the patient? I don't know. Well, he's fully clothed, and you're putting a line in him, and he's a motorcycle accident, and you've been here half an hour. What do you know about him? Nothing. So that
But get
beautiful.
that IV, get that life saving saline into the system.
Oh yeah, beautiful lesson there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, one of the things people wonder in my classes why I harp on shock and aerobic anaerobic so much. My EMT instructor in 1985, who Vietnam Navy corpsman, in the height of the summer, next duty station was the middle of the winter in Antarctica.
Perfect.
Yeah, but he taught us. He didn't teach. I don't remember him teaching us the mechanism of it, but his word was shock is the beginning of the dying process. Not, he's a little shocky. No, he's starting to die. Stuck with me all this time. So I ask everybody that question.
Yep.
So you went from Trinity. How'd you come north? Where'd you go?
So I had been at, let's see, so I've been at Trinity, went to Lifeline, and then I spent a lot of years at Cataldo Ambulance, and then came back to Trinity um, when they got the City of Haverhill contract. And my buddy was the operations manager at the time, and I'd come back and was doing per diem, and then he was like, I'd like to bring you on as a supervisor, and I think you'd be good fit for the group. And so I did, supervisory stuff, and we worked the truck too. So it was like a, online supervisor, like a lot of the ambulance companies would do. And then Trinity expanded. We ended up coming into southern New Hampshire, so we took the old Medic 12 territory of Plastow, Atkinson, Danville, and I was working up there for a long time. And then in 2010, I left there. I took a job running a dispatch center for a private ambulance company, which is a good learning experience for me too. And then I ended up, I actually moved to New Hampshire after we got married and had kids. It was time to expand. And you couldn't afford a house on the North Shore of Massachusetts at the time. So my wife's family was up in New Hampshire, so we looked and we settled in Epping. Uh, it was a beautiful little town. We had a nice house. We lived there, and I got on the fire department there and started working for AMR Manchester in 2012, 2011, 2012, yeah, 2000, end of 2011. I was working for AMR, and that's when I got hired by Exeter ALS. Short time after that, so just picked up my life and moved north and started doing EMS in New Hampshire and doing fire in New Hampshire, and I just had no desire to go back to Massachusetts after that. There really wasn't a need. I mean, I was doing all sorts of stuff with in operations. I was working in some of the busiest systems with Manchester and occasionally Nashua. And, you know, sorry, that's going to be a little loud.
That's all
Um,
right.
the just EMS in New Hampshire was just, in my opinion, was a lot farther ahead than it was in Massachusetts in regards to the protocols and the scope that we were able to do and everything like that. You know, and Exeter was a great learning experience for me because doing the non-transport, doing paramedic intercept, working in the ED, being an RSI service, which was been great. Learning that aspect of things because we didn't have that wherever we worked. So that was my first experience with that, and I've been in New Hampshire ever since.
I did a refresher this weekend. AMR AEMT with me, and in the class, that that system is struggling hard right now, and not just because it's AMR. It's just that city's system. I'm sure services play a part, obviously, but I
Oh yeah,
mean, they got days where they've got one medic on,
yeah. It's
and they've
hard. It's hard. I mean, the whole unfortunately, if you look around, the whole industry of EMS and public safety is struggling. I mean,
yeah,
when fire departments, like city fire departments, are advertising for multiple job openings and offering a $4,000 sign-on bonus to join a
yeah,
fire department, like that never happened. It was like waiting list, and you'd have to know somebody, and to get that job. Now it's like we're going to offer you a $4,000 sign-on bonus to come join our fire department. There's a struggle. I mean, and the privates are doing the same thing. I mean, during the height of the pandemic, I mean, there were private entities in New Hampshire that were offering $10,000 sign-on bonuses to go
yeah,
work for a transfer service. And everyone's raising their pay scales, but we're not getting the product that we used to anymore. The numbers just aren't there. So you know, here, like where I work in Loudon, these small towns, it's like we're taking these kids out of high school. Like we're going to the high school CRTC program and talking to these kids about the jobs and trying to get them interested into it, to join our department. We're putting them through EMT school. We're putting them through fire school. And then as
mhm,
soon as they're all licensed and certified firefighters, they're off because they're now getting scooped up by the bigger cities like, Manchester and Concord and Nashua and Portsmouth.
yeah.
Uh, so we're kind of like a breeding ground for it in a small town like this. So it's definitely a struggle, all on all aspects, and we see it in the hospital as well. So
Oh
I,
yeah,
I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I mean, somehow, some way, we're going to have to get through this pandemic and get staffing levels back to where they are. But yeah, I feel bad for my former colleagues down in Manchester, especially because they run day in and day out. The call volume is higher than it's ever been, and they don't have the staffing. They can't keep help for whatever reason that may be. It's a struggle when you start hearing, towns lose ambulance coverage from contracted providers because they can't cover it anymore, and they have to go out and develop their own ambulance. Like I know two systems that have gone online in Concord, two private entities that came online in Concord this year, trying to get their business off the ground, and they can't even open the doors because they can't get staffing.
wow. Yeah, we've seen this pay increase for the new guys.
Yeah,
We're dead ended. I mean, I've seen. I mean, I've been capped for 10 years. I've had a few increases, but not.
yeah,
It's just not there.
yeah,
The it's closing down, and guys like us are going. We're going
yeah,
elsewhere.
yeah,
And it's hard, like for me to look at 35-year medic at this dollar hour and know that I was doing the same job they're hiring these new nurses at 40, 50% more. All right, it's time for nursing school. No. And that's what got me thinking about this interview process was, all the time I spent looking how, where, what can I do, how do I finance it, all that shit. Um, that's kind of what got me thinking about this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I heard AMR starting to stack calls now for dispatch.
Yeah. 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 Hear it everywhere too. Everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's kind
Uh,
of why I was fortunate. I was kind of fortunate to be able to get this job as an EMS coordinator at the hospital because, let's face it, we're not getting any younger. I mean, I still love working the truck. I still do it full time in Tri-Town. But it's a smaller system. It's a one truck operation. Slow, does an average of maybe 4 or 5 calls in a 24-hour period. We have the power load system, so I don't have to worry about my back injuries as much as I used to anymore, which is great. Now I can continue to work in EMS for a lot longer. Yay!
I,
But I
I,
still love
I,
I still love doing it. That's the thing. I
right.
still love being a paramedic. I really enjoy doing making a difference, interacting with people and trying to help them, even through the whole pandemic. And it's been an adjustment. I think a lot of us, hopefully all of us, have changed our practices in regards to PPE and being safe, more so than we ever have before. I mean, yeah, we used to carry masks and gowns on the truck, but we just kind of sat there and collected dust under the bench seat.
Yeah.
Nowadays, PPE is at a commodity, and we're wearing full PPE on all masks and gloves and eye protection on 99% of our calls.
Yeah.
And then we upkick it, with gowns or N95s, if we have to, for those suspected patients or aerosolization of patients. And that's going to be a change in practice, and we're going to probably be here for a while.
Yeah. I said that in the beginning that masks in medicine 24/7 aren't going away. Once they
No,
get, like in the ER, for example, they wear them all the time. We take them off between calls and hope our partner isn't infected. But um, yeah, we're in them. We're never coming out.
yeah,
But
no,
I got,
I agree.
I got my 3 vaccines. If I get it now, it's God's will. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm, that fully vaccinated, booster shot done in January, and
yeah,
knock on wood, it's been 2 years of this pandemic, and I haven't come down to it that I know of.
yeah. I've gotten sick a couple times, and I've been tested.
Yeah.
And a couple times, like really stupid, simple symptoms, which is what my daughter had. So the last time I had a little bit of like a sore throat, and I just didn't. I was like, oh God, I got the COVID now. Because that's exactly her
Ro-
symptom, and
I
I
got the
didn't.
road.
Got the
Yeah.
Rona. Um, so your EMS coordinator position.
Yeah.
Um, so a generic provider impression of the EMS coordinator is part-time job, mostly an ER nurse, sits on her ass, her, whatever, a lot, and really only interacts with us or does anything when we fuck something up. And until I worked in hospitals, yeah, that was my impression of it. What surprised you most about your job as the core? And this was when you started, it was just one hospital, not the three.
Yeah. The thing that surprised me the most is that my job actually wasn't that. I thought that, oh, I'm gonna have an office. I drink coffee. I just yell at people when they screw up. Oh no, 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 no. I will tell you that it has been, like I said, I've been doing EMS and public safety since early 1990s, so going on 30 years now. And I have learned more in the last 5 years in this position than I could have ever have. And not in the aspect of, patient care and stuff, but like the background that goes into it, like learning about CQI, learning about educating, sitting on all these different committees. Like, yeah, I was sitting there talking with my director, who's oversees in a couple of other departments, but he oversees EMS. And he's like, I'd like you to just kind of give me a summary of exactly what you do, because he's new to the position. He just came to us, a few months ago from Pennsylvania. He says, I want to learn more about what you do. He says, I'm intrigued. He's a retired police officer, so he's got a public safety background. And he says, give me a list of some things. He says, sit there, think about it. Give yourself a week or two to tell me what you do. I think I got like 6 full pages of the things that I do. And I'm like, holy shit, how the hell do I do this? Um, but the biggest thing about my job is I love interacting with people. And it's not because someone screwed up, protocol violation or like that. It's like I go out into the ambulance bay and I shoot the shit with the guys. I go out on the road a lot and I'll, you know, bring them some supplies that they ordered or they left a traction splint behind and I'll drop it off or I'll go and have lunch with people and going out and doing education at their stations or, asking for follow up on calls and asking my input on things. It's been a huge public relations position. And I don't know if everybody does it that way. I mean, in talking to some people, they do, but there's some that don't. And it is just like how you explained it in the beginning, where they sit around and, it's a part time position. I've made it, I've made it my goal is to be a true advocate for EMS because the EMS providers might not get a feel or a sense of how it actually works in the hospital with things. And we all know that there's a lot of people in a hospital that don't really understand everything that EMS provides. So to kind of bridge that gap, that's kind of in a nutshell what my role is. So if a nurse complains, well, hey, so and so brought this patient in and they shouldn't have come here because it was a trauma patient. I'll use an example like that. Go to a critical access hospital with a trauma patient, um, and they didn't put a collar on for whatever reason, and they don't understand. Like, well, this patient was in an MBA; they should have had a collar on. It's like, okay, well, let's look at the patient and what they had for injuries and what their complaints was, and let's look at their EMS report. And it's like, okay, well, they didn't complain of neck and back pain. They didn't have distracting injuries. Yeah, there was probably some mechanism there, but here's documented that they did a whole spinal motion restriction assessment. And they ruled out for the need to do spinal immobilization. Well, I didn't know what that was. I'm like, I know, and that's why I'm educating you on it, so you have a better understanding. These of automatic reporting and collaring patients are gone. For the reason why they came to your hospital, it was in the middle of a snowstorm. They were 40 minutes away from any hospital, regardless. So to have a patient that had, leg fractures and was in a significant amount of pain, it's going to take him in a snowstorm almost an hour to get to any hospital, let alone a trauma center, which they're not anywhere near from. You're not going to get a helicopter to fly the patient because of the weather. They did what they thought in their right mind was to go to a facility where they could have the patient assessed, maybe stabilize the fracture, get some additional treatment in regards to pain management, and then ship them to the trauma center. I think they did the right thing here. And so it's been a good education piece. And then, you flip it to the other side where EMS is like, I know you guys are busy and, you're holding patients in the ED, but sorry,
Sorry.
alarm activation. Um, so, what we're seeing now with COVID and everything like that, we see a lot of overcrowding. The EMS providers are complaining that they have to bring patients out to triage more often, or they have to become wallflowers for a bit, wait for a bed. And it's like, guys, I sympathize with you. I understand. We have to work together to try to come to an understanding here. So it's like getting them the information that they need so they understand. Like, okay, look, like I'll give you an example. Today, we're holding 20 something patients in the ED at Concord. There's 8 mental health patients on top of those medical holds waiting for beds. So like 20 something out of 30 beds are occupied by admins. There's nowhere to put ED visit patients because the patients are still going to come in to be seen by a doctor for their ailments, and ambulances are still going to transport to the hospital. I mean, we're not going to go on divert. Hardly ever has that happen. But to give them the information, it's like, look, guys, it's going to be busy. Just prepare ahead, and a lot of departments have relied on that information. So I'm like sending that stuff out twice a day now, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, so they can plan ahead. And some departments have brought on additional staffing in days like this so that they know, okay, there's a good chance that our ambulance is going to get delayed at the hospital. We don't want to jeopardize our community by not having coverage. We can't guarantee on mutual aid because they might be in the same boat as well, waiting for beds at the hospital. So they've kind of supplemented staffing in that type of situation. So in any event, just being that resource for both the hospital staff and the EMS staff, and kind of being that guy in the middle that kind of bridges the gaps where knowledge base is. Um, it's been it's been a good thing in my opinion, and people have a better understanding of and respect for what the other does.
Yeah. And I think a hospital having someone like you that feels that way, you say PR. I know my young days in Manchester, we had Elliot and CMC. At the Elliot, it was not Bob, Bill Brown. He was great.
Yeah, yeah,
I couldn't tell you who the different coordinators were at CMC. And if you had 50-50 and they didn't care, you went to the Elliot because maybe you'd run into Bill. So, I mean, in a system, in a city, that person brings money in. Whether, I mean, he did all the EMT programs. He did the only intermediate programs in New Hampshire for quite a while. And we just all got to know them. We went to their ER for clinicals, etc. So, um, a progressive person like that, absolutely. It's
and I
great.
think it speaks. I think it speaks volume. And I think any of the EMS coordinators around the state are good at what they do. They have different backgrounds. I mean, not all of them are medics. Some are basic EMTs. There are some that aren't even EMS providers, and they're nurses. There's a couple of the northern country that it's the EMS coordinator for a small hospital way up north near the Canadian border is the EMS coordinator, and he's the director of the ED, and oh, he's also a nurse and anesthetist, and he's like the safe, he wears multiple roles, and it's hard for them to be able to do all of those jobs at once. But in any event, having I think it's really important to have that EMS coordinator really understand both roles. So to be active in the ED as much as possible, but on the same hand, having I use the term street credit, where it's like the EMS providers on the street say, hey, Craig's good to us, he communicates well, and he's one of us. Like he works on the truck still full time. Like he
Mhm.
understands the concerns and issues that we're dealing with. So I've been very blessed to be able to work on both sides of it. And I think
Good.
my hospital background from working at Exeter definitely played a part in that because I got a better understanding of how the emergency department worked or how the hospital organization worked.
Yeah.
So to be able to bring that knowledge base to this role has definitely helped.
Your little twice a day newsletter, which means you never get a real day off at Concord because
No,
twice a day this letter goes out, this little email. Um, and I saw the potential for an issue with that newsletter. And a
yep,
month or two ago, you guys sent a little note out. Um, and it was a concern that crews were, because we're pretty good at signing people off. Hey, you're great. You don't need to go. How was this like one thing, or was it kind of like an expanding issue where crews were utilizing it?
yeah, no, it was, and it's a really good question. It wasn't really an issue, but there were a couple of situations that arose, and I say a couple, and I do mean that. It was only a couple. It wasn't that bad. But we had a couple where services had gone for whatever, came in as a alpha level sick person, whatever, generic. And they get there and it's, vague, and they do their due diligence, they do their assessment, they take vital signs, they do a sample history and all that other stuff. And they would say, well, just so you know, the hospitals are really busy right now. You might have to go to the waiting room, or you might have the extended waiting time to be seen. So they would get signed off, and they'd say, you can take your own vehicle and maybe go to urgent care or contact your primary doctor. So there was a couple that had shown up at like an urgent care center, um, or that shown up in the ED on their own because they didn't want to, for whatever reason, didn't want to go by ambulance. And then you hear about that from the urgent care centers and saying like, hey, so we had this patient come in that had fallen, and they didn't appreciate any injuries on the assessment, but when they got here, they definitely had a fracture and ended up having to do whatever. And you know, the concern was there. So before it got worse,
Yeah.
before it spiraled out of control, and no one and administration thought it was a bad idea that we were giving people this information. But just to remind them, it's like, we're not giving you this information to say that we don't want your patient. We do. We want the patients. Those patients need to be seen. And if that patient is legitimately sick, and they're going to be seen based on the severity of their clinical presentation. It's not going to be automatically that they're going to go to the waiting room and sit for hours on end. The sick will get seen, and they'll make the accommodations however it needs to be done. Somebody out, give somebody room so that they can start CPAP, BiPAP on a respiratory patient. So be it. If they're having an MI or they're having chest pain, we're going to get them into a room and do a 12 lead EKG. If they're having a STEMI, then we're going to get them up to the cath lab. So, we kind of address those situations one by one. Again, not in a punitive manner or punishment. It's like, hey guys, we appreciate what you're trying to do, but understand, us, these patients really shouldn't be staying home. If they're calling you, and if they have ailments, they're not doing well enough to call 911. They should be seen by a doctor sooner rather than later. So don't put that on yourselves, from a liability standpoint. And certainly don't dissuade somebody from going to the hospital based on the needs of the patient. Yeah, we get those patients all the time where it's like, yeah, I've had a toothache for a week. Okay, well, you probably don't need to go to an emergency department via ambulance right now, but I'm not about to sit there and judge people. Like, it's easier for me to throw them in the truck and bring them to the hospital. I don't care.
Well, you take me, I'll get right in. And I've worked in enough systems that that doesn't happen. I
Yeah,
mean, but it's unique. It's new in New Hampshire for a lot of hospitals.
yeah,
At Frizz, when we leave there on a call, we knew they were swamped, and we call. We do our report and go, "Hey, we're taking them to triage. No worries," and
yeah.
that would be like the whole report. So that was unique, but most of the hospitals don't do that. So this is it is educational for everyone, and
Yeah, and we
not a bad idea.
no, and what we started doing, and I don't know if you actual read the graphs and see the numbers and stuff like that, but it says down at the bottom, it says EMS triage on arrival.
Mhm.
What we started doing at the three campuses, we started at Concord, and then we've kind of expanded it to Laconia. Franklin, not so much, just because their staffing model is different, and I don't think they have enough staffing to be able to support it. But on days like today, where the ED is really overcrowded with admits and mental health, and the waiting rooms lined up, and using hallway beds and using unconventional spaces to try to get patients seen and treated. Um, the EMS triage on arrival would be essentially like, you would come in, be a stretcher, you'd be met by the charge nurse. The charge nurse would do initial intake, vital signs, listen to what the chief complaint was and everything. And they would say, okay, this patient needs a room, so if you can, just hang here. We're gonna try to move somebody out, get another bed in, or we'll find a spot for you. Or okay, low low priority, ESI 4, ESI 3 from the hospital
Mhm.
triage system. We're going to send you guys out to triage. At least they will be seen by the triage nurse who will complete the triage process, get some labs done, get imaging ordered if applicable, and go from there. So at least eyes were getting on the patient. They're not seen and forgotten about and becoming wallflowers with a patient. And we're not accepting, I think that the concern was is that ambulances were coming there with patients on stretchers sitting against the hall. And I think the concern would be that, well, what happens if something happens to this patient? Who's going to be responsible for it? You're on hospital grounds, you're in our department. Eyes are going to go on that patient as quickly as we can to see that patient, to make sure that, we're getting the patient where they need to be, while taking that burden off of EMS to have to, held the responsibility of that patient, because no one's seen that, no one's put eyes on that patient, and it's been well received.
And we give report to somebody, we've turned them over.
Yeah,
So like when we would do that, take them out to triage, I'd walk right to triage nurse and go, "Hey, this is your patient sitting over there." So um,
yeah.
radio report wise, do you want to? Would it be helpful for us to do a little more maybe on some of our patients to give you guys a better heads up of, well, maybe we do need that room ahead of time, or now maybe we can triage with this patient.
It depends on how. I mean, it's always good to get as much information, but at the same hand, not draw it out.
Hmm.
draw out the radio reports at all. I mean, I've sat there for a couple. I've probably given a couple, to be honest with you, where the nurse is on the other end saying, "Oh my God, Craig, land the plane, will you? For crying out loud, make it happen." But to paint a good presentation of what good clinical presentation of what your patient needs. I mean, if you say that your patient is having shortness of breath and their SATs are shit and their end tidal is high and they're on CPAP, I mean that's giving us pretty much a good picture of what that patient's going to need. However, generalized weakness or some vague abdominal pain with no vomiting. Yeah, I've heard some of the nurses do it. Is do you think that this patient would be triage appropriate? And you're kind of putting that on the EMS provider to make that decision, which that's kind of what's prompted. Like, let's say room assignment on arrival, and I'm not. And some nurses still will say, "Is this patient triage appropriate?" And I get that. And it is what it is. But they're still going to put eyes on that patient even when they come to it. So if the nurses, if the EMS provider is saying, "Yeah, the patient's triage appropriate," they're going to say go to triage on arrival, but they're still going to come through the ambulance bay. Someone's still going to put eyes on that patient. And, if for some reason the clinical presentation that EMS made is different than what the nursing or the doctors are seeing, then they'll make the adjustments there. So I don't think there's really anything that they need to say other than just making sure that you're, giving a good clinical presentation for the staff of the hospital and being an advocate. If your patient can't sit up, is in a tremendous amount of pain, and they're trying to push it, be an advocate for the patient, and that should be on both sides. And it
Right.
is for the most part. But, as our job as EMS providers is that, sometimes the patient can't advocate for themselves and we have to kind of do that job for them. That's what we
Your
do.
your newsletter may at some point buy some business for one of your hospitals. Because if I ever need stitches, I'm looking at your newsletter.
Yeah.
Like,
I was
oh,
thinking the same. I was thinking the same thing this morning. It's like, geez, if I cut my hand this morning, I'm driving to Franklin.
yeah.
No lie, no.
I
Um,
know Frisbee swamped. I know, oh, okay, here we go.
and it's
Um,
funny, some of the other hospitals have actually started doing the same thing as I have too. So like we're starting to see some out in the western part of the state. Wentworth Douglas does it twice a day now. Brian Nicholson, he kind of basically said, "I'm stealing this if that's okay." It's like, yeah, get the information out. It's going to help people make a better decision, not in regards to not transporting, but knowing what the patient's going to need and expectations of what's going to happen for them when they are on arrival. Because the last thing you want to do is run in with a patient knowing that you have a call pending that you might not be able to clear your stretcher immediately. So it's just,
yeah.
I think it's good information, and the hospital has been, for the most part, well behind it. We had, like I said, a couple of those blips that happened that we've kind of self-corrected at the time and just kind of re-emphasized why we were doing it. We haven't had any issues.
What you are you the only EMS guy for all three, or do you have people that help you with the other two?
No, I work under two different doctors. So there's a medical director for Lakes and Franklin. I'm sorry, Laconia and Franklin, and then Dr. Ricks for Concord. Um, and I intertwine with the safety department. So I have different safety coordinators, in regards to like disaster preparedness and stuff, where
Please.
they kind of handle the disaster preparedness type thing, but they loop me in on some of it. But it's not really my. Some of the EMS coordinators around the state really do all the emergency preparedness too, and that is not what I fall under for the most part. Although I do work with these emergency preparedness people on some projects. But yeah, so for the most part, it's just me. I have asked for an assistance and I have asked for a raise, and they're working
Yes,
on it.
they obviously gave you 66% more pay, right?
Uh,
Or
I
no,
signed I signed a disclosure statement, so I cannot actually confirm nor deny it.
actually, it would be 300 times more. So anyway, yeah. See, that's why I'm taking college math right now.
Yes.
Oh Jesus. So between your experience with just EMS management, supervisory management stuff, and this, what would you tell that EMT, AMT, or paramedic? Hey, go take this class, whether it be just a class or a degree, or what would help them most trying to move forward like this?
Well, I mean, if they wanted to seriously like go far in EMS and make EMS a career, kind of like what I have, kind of what you have, um, I would take some. I would take leadership courses. I've taken a number of different leadership courses over the years, which has helped me become better at communicating and oversight, um, but I would really stress the education piece. Like, learn as much as you can, learn how to be an educator, an instructor, because that's what's going, if you're passionate about what you do and you believe in the job that we're doing, there's no better feeling than to be able to go out and educate somebody on these topics. And I'm sure you would probably agree with that. Like, we love this shit, and you know, my thing that I love to talk about is mental health and cardiology type stuff. So I had taken a year years ago. I had taken actually a year hiatus from EMS and was working at Mass General Hospital in Boston. I worked in the cardiac cath lab as a cardiovascular technician, and I learned some amazing shit from some of the most world-renowned cardiologists about STEMIs and EKGs and what the artery mapping looked like, and they were doing procedures, you know, valve replacements and all this other thing. So I learned a whole lot, and that's kind of just followed with me with EMS. Is that I love reading 12 leads. I love you know looking at cath films and seeing the before and after pictures of what the blockages look like compared to this. Seeing the stuff that we're doing now with the valve replacements through a catheter rather than doing open heart surgery that they've done. It's phenomenal. The Impella devices that go in, like the internal supplemental pumps for the heart so that patients are in cardiogenic shock and stuff like that. So just if you believe in what you're doing and you're passionate about it, share your passion, share your wisdom with people, and run classes. Become an instructor coordinator and run programs and develop the future because I think there's a lot of good programs out there for EMS. There's some not so good ones either. And if you want our future to continue to grow and have our protocols grow and our scope of training grow, there's nothing better to help us do that than to educate the young ones so that they can go farther and take things further than we have and get involved with get involved with stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different committees out there. Go to these medical control boards and learn about what the doctors are talking about, trying to help us, you know, trying to help EMS go further in regards to protocols. Sit on the protocol committee, go to coordinating board, all these other things. Like, get involved. Like, I've learned so much in this position by going to these meetings and talking to other people and seeing how things work. Even like listening to some of the legislative shit that goes on behind the scenes that pertains to EMS. Like, there's a whole big world out there in regards to public safety that we don't necessarily see from the ambulance or the fire truck, that can really make an impact on how we do our jobs. To be able to, sit on these, go to these meetings. And, I'm fortunate enough. I sit on a lot of committees now too.
That may
And
be the first time I've heard somebody say it that way. I'm
what do you mean?
fortunate to sit on all these committees. Most people complain because of the committees they're on.
Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, when you're looking at your calendar, it's like, okay, I got 3 Zoom meetings at the hospital today, 2 in-person meetings, and I have to go over to the, Smoky Bear Boulevard to sit for 2.5 hours. There's a lot of things that go on there, but I am fortunate because I believe in what we're doing is important. I think what EMS providers bring to the table in public safety is genuinely important and saves lives and improves the quality of care. And be able to sit here and work with some great people in the industry to progress our field, to develop our protocols based on evidence, and to get out there and educate people on these things and the topics that are important to us. That's a blessing, dude. Like,
Yeah,
people shouldn't take that for granted.
I know.
I
When I
know I did years ago with trainings and all this other stuff, and like, people would sit in refreshers and education and just like, oh, roll your eyes and this is boring. I want to go drink. But like, I truly value now more than ever the ability to educate and teach and to learn
yeah.
to move forward. So that would be my recommendation. Get involved and take as much in as you can. And if you're truly passionate about it, teach others so that they share the same passion as you.
Mhm. The boards at like the state, when I was with that, when the educator at Exeter, I used to go to those. That was part of my gig. And I don't now because I don't get paid for it, which sounds a little greedy, but I do. I read their minutes. I
Yeah.
do still read the med control board minute and the coordinating board minutes every couple of months because they meet every other month, which some
Yeah.
people might not know. You can go on their website, on the state website, and you can read and see why. Because people bitch like, "Oh, the protocols are changing again." Well, yeah, but this is why.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
this is
out
going
there.
to benefit. It's going to benefit you. It's going to benefit our patients. You're going to
Yeah.
expand your skill. I mean, whoever, first off, years ago, whoever thought that paramedics would be doing CPAP?
Mm,
EMT basics doing CPAP because evidence has shown that basics EMTs can do it and it improves patient outcomes rather than just slapping a non-rebreather on somebody's face. Because yeah,
yeah.
you're taking care of the oxygenation, but you're not taking care of the ventilation. And that's just as important, if not even more important than the oxygenation. So to be able to sit there and look through evidence-based theories and read articles and hear from physicians and respiratory people that say, CPAP is better, BiPAP is even better, but we'll get there. But to be able to say, look, by doing all these things, we are able to adjust our protocols, improve patient care by improving, the education and allowing our EMS providers to operate to their full potential.
So,
And that's what I love about it.
yeah, absolutely. The three hospitals, so around all three, speaking of advancing care, um, who do you guys have coming into those three that are doing RSI now?
So Concord has right now three services. So it's Concord Fire, Hopkinton Fire, and Tri-Town Ambulance.
Oh, good.
Laconia has it's actually a hybrid program. So it's combined Tilton, Northfield, Franklin, and one paramedic from Belmont because they kind of all line up with each other, and they support each other with RSI. And they just came online. I'm going to say early 2020, so they're going on 2 years now. So they're the newest ones that I know of, and very passionate about it. Education wise, they in fact review 100% of their RSIs. Myself and the medical directors for both campuses, we review 100% surgical crikes or RSI as well. We do it, annual education with them, full day in the simulation lab, and it's been really good. And it's funny, Concord does things a little bit differently than Laconia does. Laconia, they seem to be very heavy with the ketamine and rock, whereas down here it's still the old school of accommodate and sucks, but there's some mixed in. But the RSI programs have done quite well, and I'm proud of all the providers that do it. I mean, no one's perfect. There's always some here and there you look at. It's like, what could we have done better? The trauma surgeons, they don't like the rock uronium because they can't do a neuro assessment on a head injury because now they're rocked and they're going to be down for a little bit longer.
By
But
the time we get there.
what's that?
Not by the time we get there.
No, exactly. But but yeah, so I'm pretty proud that there's four services, and there's actually two more services between the two areas that are running data, putting their plans together to present to the medical directors of each hospital to say we want to do it. Here's why we think we need it. Here's our plan. And everybody that's come on, like when Tri-Town came on, and I wasn't working at Tri-Town at the time, like they put a really robust program together. In regards to what not a program, but I mean, yeah, it was a program.
Yeah.
But they gave statistical data on the number of calls where RSI would have been indicated and would have had improved outcomes. They said, this is what we want to do for training. This is what we want to do for education. This is what we're going to do for quarterly competencies. We want to do education, 100% CQI. We're going to buy ventilators, to carry on the trucks to run with RSI, the whole nine yards. And it was impressive. Like it was really impressive to see that kind of program. And then the Laconia guys, I mean, the Franklin and Phil Northfield guys with Belmont, they kind of did the same thing up there. And, they made a good case presentation for them. The doctor's like, yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. So
we with Action doing this, we got lucky. Matt Duns is a medical director. He told us, I want you to have it. So we didn't have to come up with numbers. We had them available.
yeah,
But it's basically the Exeter program. I just kind of like cut and pasted. Hey, to start with, we're going to do every 6 months competencies. And it was funny because you mentioned us old guys. So I'm doing the original training for it. He's going to do, the testing, but I'm talking about post intubation sedation, and because I know Versed and fentanyl. And my son, Sam, 24 years old, 2-year medic, no RSI experience, goes, yeah, but we can do a ketamine drip for this and this and that, and we can run, and I'm like, okay, I'm
Shut up,
sold. You got
kid.
me.
I don't want to hear it.
I'm man enough in front of everyone to go, God damn, you're right. A little extra fentanyl to be safe, and I'm cool with that. Yeah.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. And that's been the beauty too with RSI, and because you taught me RSI well over a decade ago.
yeah.
Michael Kelly is calling me. What does he want?
Oh Lord.
I'll get
Um,
back.
just a couple
But like I said,
because I don't want to keep you hours. I mean, we could sit here and do this for hours.
oh, we could all day. But no, what I was gonna say is like I learned RSI from you back in 2010, 2011, whenever it was. But like RSI has changed a lot over the last decade or so, and it has been, um, to see how it's grown. Now people are using ventilators more often. They're using video laryngoscopes as their primary. Now we got ketamine, so they're using ketamine and rock for induction. Ketamine drip. Now we're incorporating IV pumps into our RSIs because we can just put the ketamine in a bag, throw it on the pump, right dose, right concentration, run with it, keeping the patient sedated. Like it's so much better now.
Oh yeah.
It's easier. It's easier to teach. I think it's a in Christ, the bougie has been a godsend for a lot of people too. Bringing the bougie out, something we didn't have over a decade ago too. So I'm really excited to see RSI continue to grow throughout New Hampshire and EMS in general. Is it for everybody? No, but I think it's a good program, and to be able to have that available in the service areas that need it, it's great.
Yeah.
So I look forward to seeing how it's going to continue to grow
And I'm very happy. Like, we had to do all of the education, and now you've got to do the online piece with the state, and their training's gotten better. Their video training,
after that.
their course content. I mean, I know Andrew had something to do with the RSI
Yeah,
stuff.
the
And
Bible, the Merriman Bible.
yeah, and but it's a good program, which wasn't always the case with some of the stuff they put out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has gotten easier and it's gotten better.
Yeah.
In the hospitals. So as originally an outsider, now being an insider looking in, what job do you see the most demand for in the hospital, if for somebody who's looking to go
on? Nursing right now.
Yeah.
Nursing shortage. It's hard. I mean, right now we've got travelers coming in. I mean, the hospital, all the hospitals have staffing shortages. We have a FEMA strike team that's been here since January 1, working in the hospital. We had 10 paramedics from around the country helping out with staffing in the ED, the ICU, working with respiratory, just helping out doing team care nursing for patients. And it's hard. I mean, the incentive money that hospitals are putting out to get nurses to work extra, it's ridiculous. Like, these nurses are able to come in and do, make 120, 130, 150 bucks an hour. And then if they work a full 12, they get another $500 bonus. It's like, shit, I shouldn't have dropped out of Excelsior College's online program and gotten this, because I'd be a rich man by now.
Yeah, that bugs me, is that I did not go through Excelsior then.
Yeah, I know. I got accepted to it. I was all proud of it. It was 2013, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be a nurse. I'm much better off as a paramedic. Blah blah blah. Now I look at it like, I just paid cash for a new $60,000 truck, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah, I hate you. Yeah, I crunched some numbers 2 months ago. I was in Florida and I was walking around the campground. I crunched some numbers so I'm seeing travel money between $3,000 and $7,000 a week. All over the country. I crunched some numbers at $5,000 a week. 13 weeks spent, take a month off. So 3 stints over the course of a year, you're looking at $200 a year.
Yep.
With 3 full months off.
Yep.
Oh Lord, what? Yeah. Nursing school, August, I hope.
Are you really?
Yeah. Yeah, I've applied to the Tech, Laconia, and Great Bay. Doing all my stuff now. So when I go, all I'm going to have to do is nursing one, nursing two,
Yeah, yeah,
so, because you can't find here in New Hampshire, there are no bridge programs.
no,
Um, there is for LPN. A lot of the places around the country will do LPN and paramedic to RN. There's one in Lewiston. Excuse me. The prereqs are different. It's 30 grand. You got to be there 5 days a week. Not doing it. Florida, all the tech schools down there have it. But
yeah.
up here, I'm going to have to go to a full 2 year program.
I will say one thing about the hospital too is that we brought these task force paramedics in that FEMA sent us, and they've been really helpful. And they've learned a lot in regards to hospital operations, but the hospital has learned a lot more based on the job description that we wrote for the paramedics and how they're going to care for patients. Like the hospital is really looking to work to develop paramedics to be incorporated into everyday healthcare in the organization. So to have paramedics working in the ICU, working side by side with nursing using their scope. The big thing that we're seeing is the value that a paramedic can bring to a respiratory department in regards to working with the ventilators, CPAP, BiPAP, NEBs, and stuff like that. So we're working on job descriptions and looking to probably hire within the next 3 months 10 to 12 paramedics in the hospital to work in those areas, ED, ICU, and RT, and really help supplement the staffing models that they have and utilizing medics to their scope and to their knowledge base. So we'll see if the hospital's good with it, and we can, obviously commensurate the payment to be adequate enough. Hopefully, hire paramedics to work at their certification level within the parameters of the organization to help supplement the care. I think that would be pretty cool.
So, which leads me to this part. We have medics in a lot of ERs in the state, and their scope of practice is everywhere from you're just a tech to you're an ER nurse, only we're not going to pay you that.
Yeah,
What do you? I know at Lakes, because my daughter worked there for several years.
yeah,
They were peers. There was no difference in skill
yeah,
and skill. Is that
yeah.
still that way at Lakes?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, Christ, they have a couple of paramedics that work up there are actually like the charge nurse.
Yeah,
Like they're
Amanda was doing charge nurse
Yeah.
weekend.
So they were like the paramedics run full scope just like a nurse. There's really no differentiation, and they run in that charge or what they call resource person role.
Yeah.
That really hasn't changed. We're trying to do the same thing down at Concord. We have actually two level provider paramedics in the department. So we have paramedic one and paramedic two. Paramedic one, it's a tech for the most part, does lines, labs, EKGs, can help out with the medications and stuff like that. Paramedic twos expand on that expanded scope, and they actually do like they'll take assignments and that sort of thing, with some slight differences in regards to like blood products, insulin, and that sort of thing. It would have to do obviously dual check, dual sign off type thing as well.
Right.
But there are some hospitals that don't even do that. Like you said, I mean, they're stuck out in triage. You can't do anything. Or
I don't know what you're talking about.
it's happened a couple different places. And
Yeah, I
there's
don't know what.
subtle, very subtle.
I've heard that there's been some changes there too, but I haven't. Laura
Yeah,
and I talk once in a while, but I haven't asked her about that yet. So
yeah.
because she said no, I won't come on video with you. So I
Wow.
tried. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's like it's up to each individual hospital. I mean, the Bureau of EMS has no oversight over the license portion of it. So hospitals hire paramedics based on their national registry certification and whatever scope of practice that they develop internally to say that they can and cannot do.
Hmm.
So there's no standardization of it. Will
Right.
there be someday? Maybe. I mean,
Maybe.
I don't
Well,
know. I don't know who would oversee that. I mean, like I said, the Bureau of EMS would have no oversight from a hospital standpoint. Would this be something that the Board of Nursing picks up? Which I don't know how that would go. So it's
I
hard to
mean
say.
they fought us being in the ERs for so long,
Yeah.
but Franklin, do they have the same scope as Laconia?
Yes, they do for the most part. I can't think of all the differences exactly because I don't work clinically in
Yeah.
the campuses. but I know that they interchange between Laconia and Franklin.
Yeah, I know Amanda was working both. Like she preferred Lakes because it was closer to home, but she'd go
Yeah.
full shift over there.
Well,
So
and Laconia's a little bit busier, and they probably do a little bit more than Franklin does. I mean, Franklin's very small in compared to being a critical access hospital and stuff. So I think they would definitely see more with the ability to do more in Laconia.
what about EMTs and AEMTs in your ERs? You guys use any?
So yeah, so we run our techs are licensed EMS providers, so EMT or advanced EMT. We train them all to work to that job description, and they also we train them of certain things like they're able to utilize their medication scope, and they're able to do things like Narcan, epinephrine, nitro challenges with obviously the nurse knowing about it. And then they also are trained to do lines and labs, even as the EMT basics.
Cool.
So there's definitely opportunities out there. I mean, we have a paramedic that works down at our Horseshoe Pond Urgent Care Center, and he works alongside another nurse, and they're interchangeable down there. And that was the first time I down there. He loves it, and they love him. Um, it's a different mindset rather than the emergency department. But I mean, they're still assessing and doing labs and doing imaging and treating patients. And if it's sick enough, that they will ship them up to the main hospital. But I mean, there's so many different opportunities for EMS providers to work in healthcare settings these days. I mean, like I said, I was blessed to work down at Mass General in the cath lab as a cardiovascular technician. We've had a couple paramedics that have worked in the cath lab at Concord in the past too, doing the same thing. I mean, they come in as paramedics, they go out and they go to get the special schooling, they get their certification as RCIS, is registered cardiac invasive specialist, or whatever it is. But there's just so many different opportunities, excluding going, to nursing school or going to PA school and stuff like that. I think you're going to start seeing paramedics doing a lot more in healthcare just besides the street, and I'm hoping to see that grow, at the organizations that I work at going forward.
Mm-hmm. The nursing has evolved from being mostly hospital-run programs to now all being associate programs at schools, colleges, whatever. Have you heard anything about? Because it would make sense to me that hospitals start to look at growing their own nurses again, just because there's shortage. Has there been any talk that you've heard about that?
No, I haven't heard much about it at all. I know that there's other schools, other colleges looking to establish paramedic programs, but in regards to the hospitals talking about it, a lot of the hospitals, most hospitals, if not all, run their new grad programs. So like someone else does the education piece, and bring them in and teach them how to be a nurse the Concord way or the Exeter way or the Dartmouth Hitchcock way. But I haven't heard too much at all, actually, that any hospitals are going back to teaching their own. It makes sense if they could, but it's all about money.
Yeah, and if you could, because there are no. I was talking to one of the director of admissions for one of those three schools. There are no new nursing schools in New England. They're not increasing their student numbers. We had a shortage of nurses and medics, of course, pre-COVID. It's only gotten worse. Yeah. And so nobody's doing anything to try to improve this.
Yeah.
So except recruit one way or the other.
Isn't St. Joe's in Nashua still do their own nursing program?
They do, and I looked into that one, and it's but you got to be in Nashua 5 days a week, but they still do theirs.
You can just park your camper down on Kinsley Street. You'd be all set.
Yeah, with a gun.
I won't be suspicious at all.
God, shots fired again at the camper. Cool.
You're in it right now, aren't you? Aren't you in it right now?
Actually, this is my office. So
all right.
My little whiteboard and John Wayne and my Civil War chestnut. So, cool. Well, my wife bought it for me for Christmas. We were in Gettysburg, and she saw me looking at it, and we were leaving this museum, and she said, "I got to go to the bathroom." I went out to the car. Christmas, it showed up. I was like, "Ooh, cool." Anything you want to so this is at the end. Anything you want to express about like where Concord's going, or the campus is, or plans that you have for the the spring and summer for education, anything like that?
Um, well, we do a quarterly grand rounds at the fire academy that we do through Concord. Um, we just did one in January. We'll have another one in April, then July, then October. So we usually pick a topic. So for April, it'd be pediatric emergencies, and we'll go through cases that have been brought to the hospitals, and we'll find usually half a dozen, 6, 7, or 8 cases that are interesting to present, and we will contact the providers that were on that call saying, hey, we're going to do a presentation on your call. We're not judging you. We're not critiquing you. We want you to, come in and talk about your call, what you saw, what you did, how do you think it went? And then Dr. Ricks or we have a pediatric specialist maybe come in and talk about the call on the hospital side of things, what they saw, what they did, and how everything did. And it's good PR for the hospital to be able to, get FaceTime with your medical director and to, he loves looking at these cases and doing the follow up and giving education pieces on, if it was like a croup call to talk about the difference between croup and epiglottitis and, the importance of getting these kids the right medications, whether it's racemic epi or, whatever it may be. So those are always great entertainment. We usually get about 70 or 80 people show up to them, which is fantastic.
Wow.
I usually buy dinner for people. It's nothing fancy because I do not have that great of a budget, unfortunately, but it's usually pizza and sodas and water and cookies or whatever like that. So we do the monthly ALS breakfast, which is virtual right now, but we try to, hopefully we'll be going back in April to in person, and that's in the Lakes region. So we find different departments that want to host it. And it's all money that's donation. So like we pass a little blue bucket around and people donate, $5 for breakfast, and we'll take that money and the next group will take the money that's going to host it the next month and, put on eggs, bacon, toast, whatever, orange juice and coffee for people. And we'll do an education piece. This month we had Eric Yeager talking about patients in custody and utilization of ketamine for excited delirium. Before that, we talked about combat medicine, trauma medicine with Dr. Cartier from Laconia. So we keep different topics, same type of thing. It's good education. The virtual breakfasts that we've been doing the last couple months because of COVID have been really popular because people can do it from the comfort of their home or their station and stuff. So you get much more turnout than you would in conventional, in classroom type thing. But I'm all about the free, the breakfast myself. So whatever.
I don't know.
I know. We're looking at we'll be doing our annual RSI day. So, RSI services will come in and do the training with doctors in the sim lab. We'll do a mobile sim in the fall. Location to be determined, but the entire sim staff from Concord Hospital and 3 doctors come out with their mobile ambulance and all the simulation mannequins, and we'll set up skill stations and we'll do like a trauma assessment. Like the last one we did was in Henniker. Whoa, I forget. But anyways, we put the mannequins out there. We'll do a trauma case. We're going to do a respiratory case utilizing the ventilators, CPAP, BiPAP. We bring in the OB mannequin so they can do a simulated delivery of babies and that sort of thing. So that'll come up in the fall. Destination to be determined. We're looking at a couple of 12 lead classes, 12 lead and advanced 12 lead EKGs. And then I'll come out and teach whatever people want. I did a class on nitrous last week for Pittsfield. I'm doing what we're going to do one in Tri-Town next week on capnography and doing one at the end of the month in Loudon for acute coronary syndrome. So I'll be pushing out a lot of stuff through my distribution. I know I send out twice a day type stuff for, the hospital updates, but I try to do like a weekly update newsletter saying, here's some news that's going on. And, here's an attaboy for Henniker for code save. Bristol for their code save. We have one coming up for Bowen Hooksett for a code save. So we'll do that in education and statistical data and anything that people want to see and know about. I'm all about trying to put the spotlight on the services and the people that do this job every day because I think it's important. Even though we're not doing it for the recognition, it should be acknowledged. Stuff is really good. So.
Absolutely. If it's all right with you, when I close out the video part, when I post it, um, put your email down so
Yeah,
if people would like to be on your list. That's all right.
yeah, absolutely. More the merrier. Right now, I
Cool.
get about it goes out to about 1,000 people around the state. So, but yeah, the more the merrier. Absolutely. Just be
Nice.
prepared that I send out a lot of shit. So sorry.
It is what it is. Well, I appreciate your time, and
Sure, Kevin.
it's good chatting with you. And maybe this spring or summer we'll actually face to face and just shoot the shit.
I like that. I like that a lot. Appreciate having me on today, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. And keep it up. Let me know what I can do for you in the future.
You got it, brother. Thanks.
All right,
All right,
man.
man. Be safe. All
Bye.
right.